Hello, and welcome to this edition of Behind the Book. Today I'm lucky enough to be talking to Leemay Nassery, who is the author of two books on A/B testing. Leemay, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm Leemay Nassery. I'm an engineering leader based in Philadelphia. I've authored two books, as you've said. The first one is Practical A/B Testing. So that's like the initial book that you would read if you're just getting started with introducing the experimentation aspects of evaluating a product at your company, and then next level A/B testing. So that's exactly what the title says, if you're ready to take your A/B testing practices to the next level.
Cool. So, just because I think there's a bit of misconception from people who haven't read your first
Mhm.
book, can you give me like a potted what is A/B testing?
Yeah, sure. Um, So, A/B testing is a methodology to evaluate a change, like whether that's a new feature or even a system architecture um, re-architecture. The goal with an A/B test is to understand what is the effect of that change on user, product, and business metrics. You can also obviously incorporate engineering metrics too, but the way it works at a very high level is you introduce this change to a subset of users that have been randomly allocated to your A/B test, and then at the end of your A/B test, you have a set of metrics that indicate whether that change influenced your metrics in a good or bad way.
Cool. And presumably there's a bunch of statistics behind that to say whether or not
Yes.
those results are
Yeah,
significant
there's a lot of
and everything
statistical
else.
rigor to ensure that experimentation works in the or is gives you confidence in the outcome.
Right. So an A/B test could be something like, if we add another button to the checkout
Yeah.
form, what does it do to conversion or something like
Yeah,
that?
that's like the simplisticest one. Yep, is like adding a button,
Yeah.
changing a color. The more ones that are seen in practice, or at least written about in papers, are the you've seen a lot of like companies like Netflix, Spotify, Airbnb. They talk about experiments that evaluate machine learning models or AI models and understanding the impact of those models on the product.
So this is when the company themselves are using like a recommendation engine
Exactly.
or something like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
So there's
Okay.
UX oriented experiments like the button one that you described, and then there's algorithmic or system design experiments too to understand impact on important metrics.
Cool. Yeah, I was talking to somebody who worked for, I I can say probably Disney,
Hmm.
a while back, and one of their things was doing UI design,
Hmm.
and they have this interesting problem where they have a brand design, but they have lots of subsidiary
Oh,
companies,
interesting.
and each one has their own design, and so they do some pretty subtle stuff. Like he was saying that they can see a noticeable user behavior change if they put a 1 pixel rounding
Wow,
on boxes,
fascinating.
which is
Yeah.
imperceptible, but apparently it's enough to make a
Yeah,
difference.
no, there are papers out there, I believe by Microsoft or maybe it was Expedia back in the day, that illustrate simple UI changes actually do have a very large impact on metrics. And if it weren't for the experiment analysis, you wouldn't really understand that learning, and therefore you wouldn't know to apply that same concept like across the board on your product.
So how do you even, if it is that subtle, how do you even know what to experiment with?
That's a good question. Um, I think it depends. Well, first, there's multiple ways you can tackle that. There's intuition, there's like product understanding, and then there's also like the larger culture of the engineering organization, a product and engineering organization. Some organizations don't A/B test at all. They don't even have the A/B testing framework. Some organizations A/B tests as much as they can, with the understanding that A/B testing is cheap. Like their experimentation platform, their system architecture, the way they run A/B tests enables any idea to be A/B tested. Then that also means they likely have metrics that are more sensitive that suggest their A/B tests are a lot shorter. So
Right.
running these tests quickly, it's there's no loss really. Um, and then there are other situations where it's like a little bit of a hybrid approach, where some changes are A/B tested because, they need to understand the cost of introducing that change into the production. But then some aren't because like the capacity of the platform or the rigor that is required to enable that A/B test just takes too much time, and so then they do like analysis after the fact. So I think that question, it's very contextual. It depends on the the A/B testing platform itself, and then the larger culture of the product organization.
Does anybody ever A/B test with random changes?
Um,
Kind of like a Monte Carlo approach.
so I That's an interesting question. I think we can contextualize that so I can better answer it.
Okay.
So there are approaches where, for example, if you're evaluating a recommendations model, you could have a variant be random, like shuffle. You could, instead of opting for the model's ordering of the items or the content presented to the user, you could see, does our model beat random? Um, and obviously, like, given the time and energy it takes to enable and implement a model, you would hope that it would beat random. So sometimes it serves as like a good, simple heuristic to beat. Um, Other than that, I don't know if random is typically A/B tested, but I do think it's a good use case to it's a good use case for a a variant that a model would beat in the context of an A/B test.
Just a silly idea.
No, no.
So, just coming back to the basics, you talked about the organization that could be efficiently A/B testing all the time,
Hmm.
which to me implies not only do they have a great A/B testing team, but they have an architecture which allows them
Yep.
to A/B test. I mean, what if you were going into this? I guess there's two questions. If you're going in greenfield,
Hmm.
what characteristics of an architecture make it easy to A/B test?
Right. That's a good question. So if you're going in greenfield, this is where you would go for my first book, Practical A/B Testing. Um, Greenfield, you just need the basics. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You need a simple way. I'm going to remove the statistical rigor that's necessary, but from an engineering perspective, you need a simple way to tag users, and then that tag on that user indicates whether they should receive a feature or they shouldn't receive a feature. There's like you could literally take the evolution of your feature flag platform and turn that into an A/B testing platform just to start. Um, Beyond that, beyond a way to associate a user being assigned to a specific treatment or variant, and then having either the client side or the server side then determine whether they receive that feature or not. You also need data pipelines. At a very high level, you need pipelines that can produce metrics, ideally on a daily basis. You don't want to be running an experiment for weeks on end and not understand, or at least not get some sentiment on whether metrics are tanking or not. So, a slightly resilient, reliable data infrastructure that can compute metrics so that you can understand whether your A/B test is, what the outcome of your A/B test is. And that's fairly it in a greenfield situation. You need a way to assign users to a variant, and then you need a way to serve those users in the controller test variant, the new feature, and then you need a way to compute metrics.
So, I mean, you mentioned having a feature
Mhm.
flag framework, as if that's just something everybody has, but clearly that's not the case. Is that if we were to look at like a more brownfield implementation, is that something that's easy to roll in, or is it a kind of all or nothing thing?
I think it's a great question. It depends on your engineering culture and how not hacky. There's a better word for hacky. How creative.
There you
You how
go.
creative you can get. I think it depends on the scale. So like you could introduce some form of a feature flag platform to a portion of your engineering architecture. It doesn't have to be something that's rolled out entirely end to end. For example, like if you own the backend service that serves as the front door between your mobile or desktop client and then all of the server side, you could introduce a feature flag system into just that backend service. So no, I don't think it needs to happen across the board. I think it's something that can be either gradually rolled out or more strategically the areas that would lend itself towards A/B testing.
And that's good news then,
Mhm.
because it's not like a big bang.
Yep, totally. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest misconception with experimentation is that if you don't have it today, it's going to be really, really hard to get there. I think that there are creative approaches that you can take to run your first A/B test.
Cool. And then obviously in a existing application, you're going to need to make sure that your analytics are
Super important.
up to
Yeah,
scratch.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's, I think, again, depends on the culture of your engineering and product organization, but the worst thing you could do is run an A/B test and you don't have the metrics. So you kind of just
Mm.
wasted your time. But at the same time, maybe if you didn't run that A/B test, you never would have came to the conclusion that your metrics just aren't up to par in what you need. So you did learn
Mm.
something.
So I know in your book you talk about the Hawthorne effect and the idea that if people know they're being looked at, their behavior tends to change.
Mm,
And I can see the Hawthorne effect applying to the end users, the customers who are seeing something different going on. Like it's pretty obvious when you go to Amazon that they're trying different things on you because screens change day by
mm.
day. I wonder, does the same thing apply at the other end, at the company, at the developer end,
Mm.
where the fact that you are thinking about A/B testing actually changes the way you design your product?
Fascinating question. I've never been asked that question. I would hope it changes it in a way that's positive. I think a lot of what we do every day, we live in constraints and we're constantly thinking of those constraints, and then that influences the decisions we make. I hope that A/B testing kind of removes constraints and enables folks to think in a way where, what if we just tried this and maybe we tried it in a minimalist way? We can at least get some data to see if we should continue forward and maybe knock down some of the bigger barriers that would prevent that feature from going to production.
I was thinking also things like when you're architecting an application,
Hmm.
if you know that you're going to be dealing with feature flags, for example, then you're going to want to structure it in such a
Absolutely.
way that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you're very,
absolutely. From a like system design, like developer design. Yeah, like I actually, this is a good topic. I think a lot of times when there's um there's the A/B testing platform, and then there's all of the systems that rely on the A/B testing platform to then run the A/B test. Um, a lot of times that intersection we don't think thoughtfully enough how they interplay with each other. So there are situations where it's very difficult, no matter how robust the A/B testing platform is, the way that the larger system architecture and that product is built, it's kind of difficult to run the test in the first place, and that's where all these like pseudo constraints come in. Um, but I think if we think as we build new features and as we write new code, if we could think from the beginning, how would we A/B test this? I think it would set us up for success.
and I think also it would set you up for maintainability
Definitely,
and all sorts of other things as well.
absolutely,
And to that end, I read somewhere you said that A/B tests are an antidote to the idea that features that you deliver are permanent.
right. That's well said.
Could you, I mean, and that seems to be to some extent related to that. I mean, could you talk about that for a bit? Because that's really kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that I could add more color to that. One, there I've built features when I was an engineer. Now I'm an engineering leader, so I'm not as close to writing the code, but I've definitely built features on products where I was like very attached to, like I had a lot of passion and I needed to see that feature go to production and I needed to see that feature like being used with and engaged with by the users that, are using the product. And I think the thing that A/B testing does is it should ideally get you attached more so to the impact and not
Mm.
necessarily what you're building. There's a lot of things that like we don't talk about. We don't really talk about deprecating features. We don't talk about removing features that really aren't, adding to the overall experience. And then the more code that we have in production, the more support that is, the more risk there is there. the more, continuous integration and continuous like QA that needs to happen as a result by compounding everything that we've ever built.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and the idea of an A/B test, there are A/B tests where they're called degradation tests, where you remove a feature and you see like what is the impact. Um, I love the idea. It's an idea in theory. It's not really done in practice, but I love the idea that A/B test, it not only democratizes like anyone running an A/B test and then running risky ideas or implementing risky changes, but it also like is a way to make your engineering more efficient. If you're running
Mm.
degradation tests, you're removing code that just like really isn't serving your product or serving your engineering. um, an A/B test can kind of illustrate that. Where in an otherwise world, you would just keep it there. The feature would just persist.
I mean, presumably in that case, you'd have to give it some kind of cool down time after you start the test, simply because
Novelty
people
effect.
may initially go, ah, you've
Yep.
changed my system.
Absolutely. Yep.
But yeah, I love that idea because I think so many systems are carrying around the weight of the
Yeah.
last N years,
Uh-huh.
and being able to just chop them out
Healthy.
is really really
Yeah.
powerful.
And then how do
Yeah.
you do that surgically? Yeah. How do you do that? Especially like I'm sure you've been in situations where a product or a code base is like there are some like files that are thousands and thousands of lines of code. Like how do you know surgically what would have an impact on your business, product, and user metrics?
Right.
And that is
Although again, if it's all done behind feature flags, then you take it out, and a month later you realize that was a mistake. Then
yeah,
you just turn the flag back on.
exactly. Yeah.
And I guess then what you need is a 6 monthly garbage collect where you say, okay, this is never going back in, and I'm going to remove it
Right.
from the code
Yep,
base.
yep. And that's one of the costs with experimentation and feature flags is you do need to do some audit at some point where this feature we tested it out or we enabled it through a feature flag, but it never saw the light of day after that. So we need to go clean it up after.
Do you need to be able to run code coverage before you do that, just to make sure, or to find out if this particular code is actually ever called?
I think that would be a very irresponsible thing to do. I don't know if it's done in practice, but I would love to see
Right,
that more
right.
often.
And something that's always confused me as a total novice here is when I read about A/B testing, typically it's we select cadres of users, and then user, A get feature A, B get feature B.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be more statistically significant if you switched around all the time who got what? So then you wouldn't be looking at the individual biases of people.
So that what you described in the latter form is ideally what should be happening. We should be randomly selecting users, and that there is a complex algorithm attached to these A/B testing platforms that that are influenced by data scientists that determine that logic. So it ideally should be a random selection of users. There shouldn't be
And then,
any like specific targeting unless the targeting is at like a very high level, meaning like at the device level
well,
or like a
okay,
device
yeah.
type or something and not like like you wouldn't be here's like what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't run an A/B test and only target users that live in Pennsylvania for like a feature that's going to be launched globally. Like it's not, I mean, that could be part of your rollout strategy potentially,
Right.
but not necessarily your A/B testing strategy. You would typically have a random selection that's a good representation of your larger user base.
Although I'm thinking you may want to have, say, you had a theory that older users preferred less choice,
Hmm.
and younger people love to
Yeah.
customize. So you might at that point want to segment based on
Yes.
your customer agents.
So you'd
Yeah.
want ideally your allocation strategy within your A/B testing platform. It should incorporate a fair number from both categories if your user base represents that. So and then you want to do like uh, post analysis. So you look at your randomly selected users that were in each variant within your A/B test. And then if you really want to, so the thing with A/B testing is it tells you what happened, but it didn't really tell you why it happened. And so then you want to dig deeper. And so you look at that larger user base that was allocated your A/B tests. Then you can start splitting based on cohorts if you have the right enough users to have statistic soundness. And then you could say, okay, well, this feature was effective for a specific type of user, and then you kind of take it from there, from what you're saying.
Right. Now, you kind of indirectly mentioned the causation correlation
Mm.
issue. When you're when you're running tests in practice, how often do you find really weird correlations that you were never expecting?
It's a really good question. I think it's not often, like at least where I am, at least in my career, I feel like in the past like 5 months, maybe once I said that was a surprising insight. Like I didn't think that A/B test would be as successful as it was. Typically, most companies, again, it depends on the culture of the company, but a lot of companies aren't trying out the most bold ideas because bold ideas
Mm,
are bold and like
right.
there's a specific appetite, there's a specific culture that comes with that. So in my experience, I haven't seen a lot of that where I'm like totally shocked at the outcome.
But is that only because you're only correlating based on the experimental design, and that if if you were to roll in other factors that you weren't part of the actual experiment, you might actually find something.
Possibly, yeah, it might be influenced by the experimentation strategy that we've employed with understanding
Mm.
the effect. So it's
Yeah, I could just imagine, for example, you have no particular geographic banding,
mm,
and and maybe customers in colder climates behave differently to customers in warmer climates,
mm.
and
Yeah, it's really possible. It's also very contextual to the product. Like it depends on like
yeah,
the
yeah,
product itself. Maybe from my experience, I just haven't worked on those type of products. I can say though that there is a lot of there needs to be that the right level of curiosity there, um, if that makes sense. Like in
yeah, oh yeah,
because it's
yeah,
very easy to
yeah.
run an A/B test and say, oh, guardrails, success metrics, they're the gains that we expect, and then continue forward. It takes an extra level of curiosity to be like, okay, this is what our success and guardrail metrics say, but like let's look in deeper. Like, is there a specific user that has a specific device type that is in a part of the world that has lower bandwidth? What is
Mm,
the impact
yeah,
on that? Like that. But then even if you understood that, like let's say an A/B test evaluated a new feature, and for viewers that had poor bandwidth, the metrics weren't as great. What would you do with that? Like that's a key part of the curiosity is like once you know something, will you be able to do something as a result? Um,
although yeah, it occurs to me as you've already got the A/B flags in there, then presumably once you finish the test, you could convert that A/B flag from being a randomization process into a does this person fit profile A, in which case I'll always take them down this route. If I'll take B, I'll take them down that
yeah, that's definitely a product strategy.
route. I know, and it makes the product more
Yeah, it
complicated.
makes the product a
Yeah,
bit more complicated.
yeah. You can when you optimize, you can make little random
Yes,
changes,
yeah,
and the ones that are better take you forward a
yeah.
bit, right? But it's very easy in those situations to get to a local
Yes,
maximum.
correct. Yeah.
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 And there could be a way bigger
Hmm.
maximum if you'd gone back down to the bottom and started slightly differently and gone up a different
Hmm.
path.
Oh, I see.
So, but I think probably you'd probably go back and say that's to do with being bold,
Right.
or is there another way of doing
No,
that?
that's a really good question, and that's actually something that I've experienced a lot in my career. Is um, it again depends on the maturity of what you're introducing into your product. If you are working on a product that, for example, has no machine learning, and you introduce your first algorithm, that's like going from 0 to 1. You're likely going to see some pretty impressive gains, but then you keep iterating on that model, that same model, and you keep making adjustments, adding new features, tweaking the design slightly. You will get to a point where you're squeezing a stone, you're
Mm,
not able to get more gains from it. And I do think that's where you have to see what's next. Like what is the next boulder you want to push it? And I think this is something that's like not often spoken about, but sometimes you have to switch the goalpost. You have to pivot like either where the goalpost is, or you just, revisit the underlying technology. Um, and that is something that is seen when practicing A/B tests on a long enough timeline on the same product space or the same product area. You're seeing that it's a bit harder to move the metrics because you've moved them as far as you could with the strategy that you have. And that's when things come
Mm.
to play, like you just suggested, where it's either time to revisit your larger strategy or, you know, figure out a new goalpost or a new metric that we should aim to improve.
Or bring the marketing people
Or
in.
that, yeah, certainly.
This is absolutely fascinating, and
Cool.
it's really cool to me that this is it's a combination of analytical and intuition,
Absolutely.
which I've always, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's A/B testing to me is it's a fascinating space in the software development lifecycle for so many reasons. One, it requires like literally every single domain that you could think of. It requires data scientists for that statistical rigor. It requires front end developers to build a seamless tooling infrastructure that teams can upload their experimentation design and then run the test, and everything is as simple as clicking a button. Look at the insights, look at the metrics. It requires data engineering. It requires back-end engineers from a system architecture perspective. It absolutely requires some level of client integration because you typically there's a client level for the product. And all of that has to be working seamlessly to enable innovation. Because you could say in one way that companies can innovate certainly without A/B testing, but at some point that innovation will be stalled if you're not really
Mm.
understanding like what's really moving your metrics. And that's where A/B testing comes into play.
So clearly, then the success of an A/B testing program, choosing the right person to manage it, that must be pivotal because that person has to be a finger in every pie
Yeah,
type
I think
person.
so. I think a lot of companies typically lean towards the A/B testing leader, of however you want to call that title. They typically lean on the statistics lens.
Mm.
But I don't think they have to. I think that they can absolutely be more engineering oriented, for example, or even be more product oriented because if you have the right folks working with you, it you can lean on them for
Right.
the
I mean,
areas that you don't have those skills set.
from the way you describe it, I would say they have to be people oriented
For
as
sure.
much as
Yeah, you have to understand incentives and you have to understand, even like the larger company goal. If your A/B testing platform isn't measuring what the company cares about, no one's going to use your A/B testing platform.
right.
It's pretty
I,
complex.
I, yeah, I gotta say this actually does sound like fun.
It is. I think so. I think it's super fun, especially because like once you solve one aspect of experimentation, there's a whole new area that you have
Mm.
to go down. Like it's a never-ending field of innovation, which sounds maybe potentially like I'm overselling it, but it's not. Like, so for example, and this is kind of what I state in the next level A/B testing book. My second book is let's say you find that testing capacity is a problem. Like you need to revisit your testing design so that you can run more tests at the same time. Let's say you solve that problem with by running more overlapping tests. Um, well, at that point, you're going to have a coordination problem too. You're going to need to be able to like your systems are going to be able to facilitate more traffic, and that traffic is different than your typical traffic, right? It's traffic that's
Mm.
serving more distinct versions of your product because you're running more A/B tests. And then let's say you solve that. Let's say you've solved the scale problem. Well, then there's also a scale problem from your data pipelines, from your data
Mm.
engineering side, or there's a usability problem if teams are running a lot more tests today than they were last year, how are they coordinating and managing all those tests? How are they ensuring that interaction effects aren't occurring? It's just like a never-ending field of improvement.
Mm. Yes, I love that. I really do.
Thanks.
And one of the things I like, and to be honest, I'm not too sure if this is from you or if this is a famous quote I've just never heard before. But the idea that there is no such thing as a failed experiment.
No, I've said this, but it was from someone else, I'm sure. It's pretty common. I think, and the reason why that's common is because you don't you don't want teams to be scared to try out ideas that may fail. But then there's also a failed experiment does tell you there's failure can mean many things, right? An A/B test can fail because it's misconfigured. And if it's misconfigured, that's insight for the experimentation platform to take and to say, okay, we need to, you know, make it harder for teams to launch misconfigured A/B tests. And there's
Mm.
tooling and system design and so many things that come into play there. But then there's failed experiments from the lens of like you ran the experiment and the insights or the metrics degraded. That's a learning too. You're learning that this feature doesn't work for the larger context of your product, and then therefore you can either go back to the drawing board and iterate on that specific feature, or you'll use that for future experiments and what not to do. So there's so many definitions of failure, and I think that statement is totally still accurate.
And for me, that is that phrase actually captures the fundamental essence of agility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, that, and it's not just to do with testing or anything else. It's to do with fundamentally how you live your life.
Yeah.
That you know,
Yeah, no,
uh,
I joke that like it's gonna sound so silly, but I mean every day you're A/B testing in some way, right?
oh, absolutely, yeah. And I always used to tell our kids, you know, try it as long as it's reversible.
Yeah, no, you've got feature flags implemented.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, for sure.
cool. Okay, so a couple of years ago you did your initial A/B testing book, and now you have next level A/B testing, which would presumably be A, B, and C testing or something. Why would somebody read the second book if they read the first?
It's a good question. The first book is anchored on like becoming familiar with the basics of A/B testing, like defining a hypothesis, defining success metrics, etc. In that book, you've learned like the basic anatomy of an A/B test. I'd say folks that want to read or that should read next level A/B testing, it's when they're at the stage where their engineering organization already incorporates experimentation. It's part of their product development life cycle. So they're not really advocating for A/B testing as a concept. That's where I talk about that in practical A/B testing, my first book. In next level A/B testing, the reader may be looking for things like running more experiments at the same time to increase their testing rate, or unblock teams that otherwise would have had to delay their experiment because there wasn't enough testing capacity. We have strategies in the book that go into detail on how you could solve that. Or maybe you've encountered frequent experiment restarts due to misconfiguration, then highlighting the need for more thorough validation before launching your experiment is an area that you should delve into, in which we go into in next level A/B testing. Or even maybe an area that you want to get better at is time to insight. Maybe it takes too long for you to get those metrics. That's where we discuss in the book. Maybe you need to revisit your metrics framework and think about, more sensitive metrics that then influence your experiment design in a way where your test is slightly shorter so that your time to insight is quicker. So I guess if you're past the stage where you're introducing A/B testing and now you just want to take it to the next level.
Or you're finding problems that
Yeah, exactly.
you're getting frustrated
Right.
at the first
Right,
level.
right.
Yeah.
Frustration driven engineering.
Which, to be honest, is probably the most
It
productive
is.
kind
It's the
there is.
actually it is the best type of engineering is that type.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and one of the cool things about engineering in general is that you can actually solve your own problems as well. So
Absolutely. Well said.
that's cool. Well, I have to say this has been I have learned a lot, and I've also just
Sure.
enjoyed the chat.
David.
And I'm beginning to regret my career choices now because it does sound like a really interesting. I mean, what I love about software is that when I go into a company, I get to learn about so many facets of that company.
Absolutely.
You know,
Hmm.
and I think I always tell people software engineers in a company are probably the people that understand the whole company the best.
Hmm.
Because they have to.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that of those people, the ones doing your kind of A/B testing are the kind of next level
Yeah.
in that they really know
Yeah, yeah. They know
what's
the
going
dark
on.
corners, they know the bright corners. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would have been my career choice, I think.
Oh,
Anyway, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and thank you very much, Leemay.
thank you,
Thank
David.
you.